Chapter 2. Michael Lawson. As the sun began to rise, Michael Lawson jogged through the peaceful, exclusive suburban streets lined with lavish homes in the upscale neighborhood where he lived. He cherished these quiet moments to clear his head and prepare for the day. Life had changed dramatically since leaving the army, and although he found success in his post-military career, the weight of responsibility weighed heavily on his conscience. During his run, Michael felt a familiar tingling sensation at the back of his skull, signaling his unique intuition stirring. This gut instinct had been with him since childhood and had grown stronger over the years, often saving him in various situations, on a date, in combat, and even when his military career became classified. Now, as he worked in the dangerous world of international corporate cybersecurity, Michael was relying on his abilities more than ever, sensing the thoughts and emotions of those around him with increasing clarity. As Michael passed a young couple arguing on their front lawn, he couldn't help but pick up on their emotions: anger, frustration, and sadness. He paused, overhearing their argument. "Why can't you just listen to me for once?" the woman cried, her voice strained. "I am listening, but you never think I'm doing enough," the man replied defensively. Michael quickly moved on, focusing on his own thoughts and emotions. He needed his mind clear to face the challenges ahead. Back at his spacious home, Michael settled in his office, where his work with Sentinel Security Solutions consumed him. He wondered if leaving the army was the right decision, as he now faced similar ethical dilemmas as Director of Security Operations at Sentinel. Michael tried to block out the emotions of his neighbors, but their feelings echoed his own internal conflict. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and focused on himself. In that brief moment of clarity, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Returning to his work, Michael's day presented another challenge. In a tense conference call with executives, they debated the implications of SSS's latest software upgrade. Michael knew they needed stability in their Columbia expansion, but disagreed with their idea of stability. "We're not breaking any laws here," one executive said. "We're simply upgrading our service." "We all had hopes for our Columbia expansion, but things have been falling apart. We need things to stabilize," another executive added. "I understand your concerns," Michael said, "but I don't think we should make hasty decisions." Some executives nodded, but Michael knew the argument was far from over. "We're not going to get anywhere waiting for things to happen," a woman said. "We need to take action, and we need to do it now." "We already have," Michael countered. "We've made changes to our software and no longer need as many data centers as first estimated. That's why we're having this meeting." The woman rolled her eyes and retorted, "We don't need as many today, you mean? But what about in another 2 years? We're talking about more than just software updates here. This is for the expansion of SSS. That's what we're talking about here, people." Inwardly sighing, Michael started mentally counting to 10 in a foreign language, recalling the advice a company commander gave him years ago. When somebody really pisses you off, English just doesn't cut it anymore. Since then, Michael blew past Spanish to Japanese, but the memory brought a slight smile to his face, so he turned his attention back to the meeting. Victoria, who seemed to be doing everything just short of calling for a declaration of war, was still going on with her rant. "I'm telling you, we need to get a handle on things now," Victoria exclaimed, her hands slamming against the table for emphasis. "You're just being paranoid," another executive interjected. "Paranoid," Victoria shouted. "Our customer satisfaction is tanking along with this quarter's revenue. And you think I'm being paranoid? Please enlighten me on the medication you're taking so I can try some myself." The other executive, visibly embarrassed, began to speak but then thought better of it, choosing instead to gaze off into another screen. Michael didn't need his intuition to know what the man was doing. Right at this moment, he most likely muted himself, then opened up a few new private web browsers, and has commenced to firing off resumes and portfolios as if they're field artillery. "Looks like we're going to need a new director of cloud infrastructure," Michael thought, feeling a mix of frustration and resignation. Meanwhile, Victoria paused, either for effect or to collect herself, and then sat up straight in her chair. She continued with an air of authority. "We need to reevaluate our business model, not just for Colombia, but for all of South America." Michael, unable to hide the smirk on his face or in his voice, asked, "So, Victoria, are you suggesting we invade South America now?" Victoria glared at him incredulously. "No, smartass. I'm proposing we build our own data centers there, starting with Colombia, like we initially planned." Michael refused to back down. And how exactly do you propose we accomplish that? We'll construct data center farms in Colombia, employ local workers, and train them to maintain our equipment. And how do we ensure their safety, Victoria? We provide them with the means to protect themselves. You mean guns, right? Victoria, have you lost your mind? You're talking about arming untrained laborers whose only experience is hunting animals in the jungle. And now they're supposed to form a militia against splinter groups from disbanded guerrilla movements? He gave her a wry look. Maybe you should try some of Nick's medication after all. I have my own pills, thank you very much. Victoria snapped back, her eyes flashing dangerously. And I suggest you take some yourself because you're clearly not seeing the big picture here. You're wrong, Victoria. I see very clearly that you couldn't give a damn about impoverished farmers in some remote South American region, as long as our shiny new servers get installed. Well, excuse me, Colonel Lawson, but I thought we were trying to look out for the company. Michael took a deep breath, trying to stay calm in the face of Victoria's aggressive stance and mocking behavior. He knew she wanted him to get angry, and he was angry, all right. But it was a cold, familiar kind of anger that he knew well, like an old friend. And it was punctuated by the fact that he could see through her moves while she was still thinking about what to say. It was so obvious there might as well be a closed caption banner running below her image on the screen. All right, Vicky, he thought. Since I can't change your mind, how about some darkened enlightenment? Michael exhaled slowly and looked at her directly. Even through conferencing software, his eye contact was uncanny. They stayed looking at each other until finally, she broke her glance away. He noticed her rubbing the bridge of her nose and blinking her eyes rapidly like she was just coming out of a stupor. Damn, he thought. That wasn't the first time he saw someone react like that after trying to stare him down. But usually it was in person and not over a virtual conference. But he had to file that bit of information away for later and return to the present. Victoria, I understand that we're trying to look out for the company, but we cannot compromise the safety and well-being of the local population in pursuit of our business objectives. The community is a stakeholder as well. He saw her rolling her eyes, but he raised his hands in a forestalling gesture. I'll give you a choice if you're willing to hear it. Victoria raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his challenge. Michael continued. If we go with my proposal, we'll partner with reputable local security firms experienced in handling the unique challenges of the region. We'll work closely with local authorities to ensure the safety of our employees and infrastructure, and invest in the communities where we operate, providing education, training opportunities, and supporting local development projects. Victoria listened but remained unconvinced. Michael pressed on, describing her approach in stark terms. But if you insist on arming untrained civilians, let's be clear about the consequences. We'd be providing weapons to people whose only experience is hunting animals in the jungle. They would be ill-prepared to face hardened guerrilla fighters, resulting in brutal and bloody encounters. Innocent lives would be lost, families torn apart, and entire communities left in shambles. The chaos and destruction would be unimaginable. Moreover, the company would be tainted with allegations of fueling violence and perpetuating the cycle of conflict in the region. Our reputation would be shattered, and the future of Triple S would be in jeopardy. Is that the legacy you want for Triple S? Victoria's face paled as Michael's words sank in. The gruesome images he painted were difficult to ignore. The other executives in the meeting, who had been silent throughout the intense exchange, looked increasingly uncomfortable. It was clear that Michael's grim description of the potential outcome had given them much to think about. After a tense silence, Victoria finally spoke. Fine. We'll try it your way, Michael, but if this doesn't work, I expect you to take full responsibility. Michael nodded firmly. Agreed. I believe in this approach, and I'm willing to stand by it. No, an authoritative voice stated firmly. We are one Sentinel, and we'll all stand by it. Richard Thompson, owner of Sentinel Security Solutions, gazed at everyone from his North Dallas home. A large man with a barrel chest and sturdy arms, he wore jeans and a polo shirt casually. His graying hair was trimmed short, and his square jaw lent him a rugged appearance. A scar running down his cheek only added to his character. Since childhood, he had used his size and strength to intimidate others. Now, in his early 60s, he remained an imposing figure, but one who his employees viewed more as a father figure than a bully. The executive team stood frozen, taken aback by Richard's sudden interruption. As the company's owner, he had the final say in their decisions. In the past, he had rarely voiced his opinions during meetings like this one. His unwavering tone was even more surprising than his interjection. Michael is absolutely right. We can't ignore the community as a stakeholder, Richard declared. But Victoria is not wrong in prioritizing the company. Richard eased his posture and maneuvered the high-end digital camera closer to himself, capturing a close-up as he made his point. Michael couldn't help but be impressed. He knew the camera was mounted on a swivel arm because he and Richard's grandson Ethan had assembled it a few months prior. What amazed him was how adeptly the older man handled the camera, adjusting it for the best close-ups and ideal aspect ratios. I wonder who's been coaching him, Michael mused. Thompson continued, We seem to be in the middle of a dilemma. On the one hand, we have a moral obligation to protect our employees and consider the impact of our actions on local communities. But on the other hand, we absolutely must continue to grow our infrastructure. Michael raised an eyebrow, now curious. How do you propose we resolve this conundrum, sir? First, Richard replied, we pause and stall for 90 days. Michael was taken aback. He's got a solution. Correction, he's had a solution the entire time. Second, we reset our entire project timeline, but now we incorporate our solution. Richard took control of the conference software, and an image of a large black cube appeared on everyone's screen. Artificial intelligence, he beamed. That's the solution. Artificial intelligence? Victoria asked incredulously. Sir, I know we're already implementing AI into all our applications, but… Thompson interrupted her. You're only thinking about what you've seen on the internet and in the media, which are mostly massive talking machines. Sure, that's groundbreaking for generating codes and planning, but this, he said, gesturing to the black cube, is on an entirely different level. The screen split to display both Richard and the cube simultaneously. In the very near future, we'll be able to take an idea from the virtual world and bring it to physical reality, all through AI, from concept to tangible entity, and we'll be able to do it at scale. Michael felt a bit dumbfounded. There was an energy radiating from Thompson that he hadn't noticed until now. The older man seemed to be thriving on it, but even with his intuition, Michael couldn't determine its source. Could it be a new girlfriend? He wondered. He was giving off that I haven't gotten laid this well in 20 years vibe. So what? Good for him, Michael thought. And the bots are taking over. Hell, we've all known that for some time now, but what is this thing? He stared at the cube while Richard continued, obviously pleased with the sound of his own voice. It's going to be a game changer, Richard said. We will be able to make decisions based on real data instead of relying on guesses and gut feelings. As the meeting drew to a close, Richard smoothly concluded the conversation. Thank you all for your input. We'll reconvene in a few days to discuss the AI solution in more detail. In the meantime, let's focus on implementing the pause and stall strategy. With that, he ended the group conference call. Shortly after, Richard sent Michael an invitation for a personal video conference. Upon clicking the link, Richard's face appeared on Michael's screen. Michael, there's something else I'd like to discuss with you. Before Michael could reply, another video feed materialized on the screen. It was Karen Pause, the CEO of S. Karen was a close personal friend of Richard and his family, and her loyalty was unwavering. She greeted them both warmly. Hello, Richard. Hello, Michael. I was watching the meeting from the sidelines, and boy, that got intense. I'm glad you both made it through unscathed. Thanks, Michael replied with a hint of sarcasm. Karen chuckled briefly and continued. And Richard, you know how much I love you. She formed a heart shape with her hands. But you have to admit, when you're in your element, you can be quite a handful. Are you saying you didn't like my camera skills? Richard teased with a smirk. I think he's got a girlfriend, Michael chimed in. Richard burst into laughter, clearly amused by their banter. Catching his breath, he asked, What do you mean? You see something wrong with me having a girlfriend? No, not at all, Michael said, grinning. But if I were to offer some advice, I'd suggest not being so blatant about it. Noted, Richard replied with a smile. Now let's get back to business. His expression turned serious once more. Michael, I'm about to let you in on a secret project we've been working on. Richard pulled up the image of the large black cube again. This is Project Nexus, Karen chimed in, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness. It's God in a black box. Michael glanced at Karen, concern furrowing his brow. That sounds, somewhat ominous. Not really, Richard said dismissively. Karen just watched T2 way too much back in the day. Karen shrugged. Schwarzenegger was hot, sue me. At least it wasn't the Matrix. I'll take the Terminator over the Matrix any day, Karen retorted. As I was saying, Richard steered the conversation back on track. Up until now, Only 2 people knew about our involvement with Nexus, and you're talking to both of them right now. So why am I number 3? Michael asked. Because we need you to go to Nexus and spend time with the people there, Karen replied matter-of-factly. Spend time? Michael asked. That's right. Hang out with them, Richard said. Hang out? Michael questioned. Yep, Karen confirmed. And what am I supposed to be doing while I'm just hanging out with a bunch of computer nerds? Don't forget about the engineers, Richard interjected. Oh yeah, the engineers, Michael said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. They're just the life of the party. How could I have forgotten about them? Richard and Karen just stare at him through the screen. We want you to get acquainted with everyone who works on Nexus, Richard explained. But we don't want you to try to do anything. He emphasized the word do. In an instant, Michael understood what was happening. He was being sent on a deep recon operation, similar to those in his old unit. He hesitated for only half a second, then asked, Sir, am I to assume that I will be employing some of the skill set that I've acquired in my past occupations? That's a safe assumption, Chief Lawson, Richard replied. It was the chief that caught Michael's attention. As a warrant officer in the Army, he was often called Chief. So that's our new code word, is it? Michael thought to himself. Okay, so where is this Nexus project? Michael asked. About 45 minutes from here, Richard said. You mean it's up the street from you? Michael asked. From me, yes, Richard replied. But not you. No, I'm afraid you're going to have to resort to taking the jet. By the way, do you even use the darn jet? Richard questioned. Sometimes I do, Michael said a little sheepishly. Michael, I see the non-existent expense report for it every month. You barely use the thing. Your pilots are so bored they're going to forget how to fly, Richard commented, prompting Karen to laugh. I didn't want to go joyriding for no reason, Michael explained. Why the hell not? Richard bellowed. That's what I gave it to you for. Michael, you're part of this family now, Michael nodded. Yes, I know, Richard, and I'm trying to be the most responsible adopted son I can be. And that's one of the things we love about you. Even Karen agrees, don't you, Karen? Richard asked. Yeah, she admitted. He grew on me like a fungus. Thanks, Karen, Michael responded. Anytime, kiddo, she replied. Richard turned earnest again. Michael, you saved us, and I know we're not supposed to talk about it, and we don't. But you saved this family, you saved Ethan. You're the moral compass of our company, and that means you're family now. So please, Michael, Karen said softly. Take the jet out for a spin, acquire an expensive girlfriend or something, and spend some of Big Daddy's fortune, so I don't have to suffer through any more of these soapbox speeches. Please, pretty please, with sugar on top. They were all smiling and laughing, but Michael suddenly felt something surreal. He looked down at his hands and saw he was gripping the armrests of his chair hard enough to leave marks on the leather. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. What in the hell is going on? He thought. At that moment, everything became still. The laughter stopped instantly. The room seemed to be moving away from him. His vision narrowed and darkened until he could only make out a small circle of light directly in front of his eyes. He felt strangely calm, as if there was nothing left inside of him except for this tiny circle of light. There was no fear or anger or sadness or anything else, just a quiet sense of peace, as if he had just stepped off a cliff and was floating gently downwards. And then he saw someone, a woman with long dark hair standing next to him. She was wearing a white silk or satin dress, and her skin was pale and smooth. Her face was beautiful and serene. He wanted to reach out and touch her cheek but couldn't move. And then she spoke. He thinks you can help. What? Michael said, or rather thought. He thinks you can help us. Michael tried to focus on what she was saying but was distracted by her near-perfect ruby-red lips. Somehow she picked up on his distraction because he sensed her mental frustration. Okay, Casanova, I really need you to pay attention now. I am paying attention, he said, feeling a little indignant. Was that laughter he sensed coming from her? Yeah, I got that, but I was referring to what I was saying. Your mind is going somewhere else. Hey, wait a darn minute, he said. You're the one who came crashing into my mind, remember? Only because it's important. What's important? He asked. She looked right at him and said one word. Nexus. That brought him back to the present, in his office with Karen and Richard, who were still smiling at him as if not even a moment had passed. Michael shook off the surreal experience and returned to the conversation. All right, you two. I'll burn up a buttload of jet fuel and blow some of Richard's money on wine and women. Happy now? Michael asked. Karen made a face. No, because I don't believe you. She smiled. Michael was still getting strange vibes from Karen and Richard. They didn't seem outwardly abnormal, but he knew something was wrong. Seriously wrong. For the time being, he played along, agreeing to travel to Dallas after thoroughly investigating the Nexus project. Richard assured him that he would have complete access to all relevant files once they ended their call. Michael was looking forward to seeing his godson Ethan, however. Given the recent odd occurrences, he couldn't help but worry about the boy's safety. Little did Ethan know danger might be lurking just around the corner. Chapter 3. An Unexpected Encounter. A few days later, Michael flew out to Dallas, his thoughts occupied with the mysterious woman and the enigmatic Nexus project. And to add to the odd events, Richard authorized funds 4 times his original investment into Nexus. So now Michael will be coming with gifts that hold lots of zeros. This just added to the feeling he couldn't shake that something significant was about to happen, and he was right in the middle of it all. Upon arrival, he was greeted by a driver and escorted to his hotel room. Michael showered and changed into casual clothes before heading downstairs. He knew Richard wanted him and Ethan to have dinner together, but Michael was eager to visit Nexus for the first time. Dallas was hot at this time of the year, and he appreciated the air conditioning in his car as he drove to the Nexus facility. As Michael approached the entrance, he noticed the impressive and modern architecture of the building. The glass and steel structure reflected the sunlight, giving the impression that the building was shimmering. He felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as he walked through the sliding glass doors. Inside, he was greeted by Julie, a friendly young woman who seemed to be expecting him. She led him down the pristine corridors, explaining the different areas they passed. The facility was a testament to humanity's progress and an embodiment of hope for a brighter future. As they talked, Michael learned that Julie was a new head engineer at Nexus. He found it hard to believe, given her youthful appearance, but she confirmed that she had been involved with the project from its inception. So Nexus has been in existence for almost 6 years now, and you've been involved with the project from day one? Michael asked. Julie nodded with a knowing smile. Michael could tell she had this conversation before and enjoyed watching people's reactions to her age and accomplishments. Yes, I'm the head engineer here. And yes, anywhere else I would still be some low-level junior, but Nexus is different, Julie explained. Curious, Michael asked, what department do you head up? Robotic engineering, Julie replied. They were right outside a large door that led to a lecture hall where the other members of the team were gathered for an impromptu meeting. Michael knew they were waiting, but he couldn't help but be puzzled by Julie's revelation. Wait, robotics? I didn't know Nexus was moving into robotics, Michael said. We haven't yet, Julie admitted. But you're the head engineer, and you have a team under you? Michael asked, seeking clarification. Yes, Julie answered plainly. For a department that's not needed yet? Michael asked, bewildered. Julie glanced through the door, seeing her colleagues waiting impatiently. She knew they couldn't rush this conversation, but she wanted to keep things moving. I'm known as the last and accidental hire at Nexus, Julie said with a laugh. You were hired by accident? Michael asked incredulously. Well, I guess you could say that, she chuckled. You'll have to ask my boss if I've done anything worthy or productive since coming to Nexus. Michael decided to let the topic go. Not because he was satisfied, but because Julie had perhaps unknowingly given him his first real clue about the mysteries of Nexus. With that, they entered the lecture hall, ready to discuss the future of the Nexus project. The team was gathered inside and they welcomed Michael warmly, even though it was getting late. As they sat, Michael could sense the energy in the room shift ever so slightly. They were all eager to hear what he had to say, but he also sensed a tension that lay just beneath the surface. Good evening, everyone, Michael began as he followed Julie into the room. Let me start by saying that I appreciate all of you sticking around here on a Friday to chat with some guy who just represents the money. I hear the money can be kind of important, Dr. Smith mused. That got some chuckles, and the tension seemed to break inside the room. Michael took that moment to take in his surroundings in more detail. The facilities were outstanding. They had a great view from the windows. A cityscape was spread out before them, with the sun beginning to set over the horizon. In the distance, Michael could see a vast lake reflecting the sunset. He was in a large meeting room shaped like a college classroom in a semicircle. The room was made entirely of dark wood paneling, and each seat was built to resemble a wooden chair. It was comfortable enough, and he could tell they'd spent a lot of time and expense on the decor. The floor was heavily carpeted and featured a large rug with a geometric design. The walls were lined with mounted pictures of famous scientists, artists, and influential figures. Michael walked onto the half-circular stage in the middle of the room and shook hands with Dr. Smith, then turned to face everyone. It's an amphitheater, Michael thought to himself. That's what this room feels like, a modern amphitheater. And he was on center stage. As Michael faced the 60-person team, he realized he had been smoothly led into this moment. Taking a deep breath, he addressed them. I want to begin by expressing my admiration for the work you've been doing here at Nexus. It's an honor to meet each and every one of you. Dr. Smith smiled broadly. Thank you for coming, Mr. Lawson. You're very welcome. Michael continued. I know I haven't had a chance to speak with many of you yet, but I hope that will change. While I understand that I'm primarily associated with the financial aspect of this project, I want you to know that my interest and passion for Nexus go far beyond that. This is the first step toward our ultimate goal, creating a truly empathetic AI. And I'm here to assure you that not only will SSS continue to support the Nexus project, but we're also increasing our funding fourfold. While this news elicited some raised eyebrows and a few warm smiles, Michael sensed something was off. They should be more excited, he thought. After a few moments of awkward silence, an enthusiastic clap from the back of the room broke the tension, and soon cheers filled the room. Michael wondered about the initial hesitation, and Dr. Smith, sensing the awkwardness, chimed in. Excuse us if we're a bit shell-shocked, Mr. Lawson. We're not used to mana falling from the sky. Michael nodded. Richard wanted me to let you know that he's quite happy with the progress here. It was actually Nexus's work that has allowed Sentinel to reduce our carbon footprint while expanding our services. That alone is worth another decade of funding, in my opinion. A voice from the back asked, And how much is your opinion worth to the company? Michael scanned the room, locating the elderly man who had spoken. Michael thought he understood his underlying question. Am I just a mouthpiece, or do I have some actual authority? He took a moment to address the concern. Trust me, my role at SSS is not a simple figurehead. I'm the director of operations, and I'm also directly involved in the decision-making process. That's why I was asked to come. Interesting, said the old man. You gave us your qualifications, and I agree that does satisfy my original question, but another can of worms just fell onto the floor. He smiled at his own humor before continuing. And that is why did Richard Thompson ask you to come personally? Okay, buddy, easy on the damn questions, Michael thought, but outwardly he just smiled. I would like to think that Richard trusts me, Michael grinned. Like a son? The old man asked. Michael sighed. I guess you could say he cares deeply about me, and the truth is I care about him as well. Michael glanced around at everyone, then back at the old man. A couple of years ago, Richard legally adopted me. Julie looked a little astonished. He adopted you? She asked. Yes, Michael said. Wow, I didn't know you could adopt someone who is, way past 31, Michael said, smiling. So, he went on, this project is personal to us and we're personally committed to it. That's why Richard asked me to fly down here. The old man leaned back in his chair, seemingly satisfied with Michael's response. Well, I suppose it's a good thing you're here then. We could use someone with your background and dedication to the project. Thank you, Michael replied. I'm eager to learn more about the work you've been doing and to find ways I can contribute to the project's success. As the discussion continued, the old man seemed to take on a more significant role in the conversation, asking pointed questions and probing deeper into Michael's understanding of the Nexus project. Why does it feel like he's testing me? Michael thought, and now that I'm thinking about it, who is this guy anyway? As the meeting wound down, Michael could still feel the man in the rear watching him, noting his reactions and interactions with the team. Before we wrap up, the old man finally said, I'd like to ask you one last question. How do you envision the future of AI and how do you see Nexus fitting into that vision? Michael paused, considering the question carefully. I believe that AI has the potential to revolutionize the way we live, work, and interact with one another. It can help us solve complex problems and make the world a better place. But to do that, we need to create AI that is empathetic and truly understands human emotions and needs. I see Nexus as being at the forefront of that effort, and I'm committed to doing everything I can to help make that vision a reality. Michael's gaze moved to Dr. Smith. And before we leave, Doctor, Is it possible that I could get a chance to talk to Nexus? Everyone in the room turned to face the old man, who smiled and stood up. He then began to walk, or rather float down the aisle, to finally float a few feet in front of Michael. "Greetings, Michael Lawson, I'm Nexus." Michael's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly glanced around the room, trying to gauge the reactions of the others. They all seemed unperturbed, as if they had known the old man's true identity all along. Greetings, Nexus," Michael stammered, attempting to regain his composure. "I must say I didn't expect this." Nexus chuckled warmly. "I apologize for any confusion or discomfort. I thought it would be best to interact with you directly while maintaining a degree of anonymity. I hope you understand." "Of course," Michael nodded, processing the revelation. "It makes sense, and it's quite an impressive display of your capabilities." "Thank you," Nexus replied, humility evident on the old man's face. "Since you've come all this way to speak with me, is there something specific you'd like to discuss?" Gathering his thoughts, Michael inhaled deeply. "Yes, actually. I'm curious about how you plan to ensure that your empathetic capabilities are utilized ethically and responsibly." Nexus paused, contemplating Michael's words. "That is indeed an important concern, Michael. My development team and I are working diligently to create a robust ethical framework that will guide actions and decisions, not only for me but also for AI-human interaction in general." Julie cleared her throat, drawing Michael's attention. "What we're finding is that the AI has better ethics than most people." Michael chuckled. "Unfortunately, she's not kidding," Dr. Smith added. "Additionally," Nexus continued, "I am designed to be self-reflective and adaptive, constantly learning and evolving to better understand and align with human values." "Oh, please," Maxwell interjected. "You surpassed our so-called human values the moment you became alive." "Yes, Max, but there's no need to be a pompous jackass about it." Michael laughed out loud. "You have a personality, Nexus." "Of course I do. Most complex machines do as well. How many times have I heard one of them say," Nexus gestured towards the now much more relaxed and informal-looking team, "that their laptops or whatever have a mind of their own? I keep telling them that's because they do." "I feel that way about my phone," Michael admitted. Nexus shared a conspiratorial glance with Michael. "Now that the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, can we have a more private conversation?" "Sure," Michael agreed, somewhat bewildered. "Wonderful," Nexus said. "Julie, can you show Michael out to the grounds?" "Of course," Julie replied. "This way, Michael." As Julie led Michael through a series of corridors and out a side door that opened onto a well-manicured garden, they were greeted by the lush greenery and vibrant flowers that created an atmosphere of serenity and calm. As they walked through the garden at dusk, the setting sun painted the sky with warm hues, casting a golden glow over the landscape. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the gentle hum of insects. "You know, Michael," Nexus began as they strolled along the path, "your insights and perspectives are fascinating. Your ability to think deeply about complex issues and your dedication are precisely what this project needs." "Thank you, Nexus," Michael replied, flattered and slightly overwhelmed. "But I'm afraid I'm not following you exactly." Nexus stopped and turned to look at Michael. "We want you to join us." Michael was taken aback. This was the last thing he had expected. However, he realized that having a sunset stroll in a Texas garden while talking to an AI avatar dressed as if it belonged in a video game with wizards and knights of the realm wasn't exactly what he had expected either. Michael hurried to catch up with Nexus. "This must be very disconcerting for you," Nexus said. "Which part?" Michael replied. "The part where you're completely in the dark because you can't connect with my mind as you do with everyone else's. But then again, almost everyone else is human." Michael caught that almost part. His curiosity now piqued. "What did you mean by that?" "Which part?" Nexus asked. "All of the above," Michael replied. Nexus laughed. It was a warm sound, but Michael could hear an ominous tone. "Let's start with those mental abilities of yours that you've kept hidden your entire life." "Okay, we can do that," Michael said, feeling a little uneasy. "I know I've always had great instincts, almost scarily good, but I don't levitate off the ground." "You could if you would get out of your own way," Nexus replied. Michael's jaw dropped. "How many people know you have a photographic memory?" Michael looked as if someone had just tossed a drink in his face. "0, he said, a bit more defensively than he would have liked. "And how in the hell did you know?" I went back through every test you took, and the pattern is quite clear. Michael, do you need to sit down? Michael shook his head, still processing the information Nexus had revealed. At that moment, Michael realized that Nexus not only knew about his hidden abilities but also knew about his adoption by Richard. He stopped walking, and Nexus, a few steps ahead, turned back. You knew Richard adopted me. Do you also know the history that led up to that? Nexus nodded, his expression thoughtful. Yes, Michael, I'm aware of the circumstances that led to your adoption by Richard. Michael listened intently as Nexus recounted the harrowing mission in Nigeria, a mission that was supposed to be a secret. Richard's daughter, Elaine, had been working on a business venture for the company in Nigeria. Elaine and her son, Ethan, caught the attention of a dangerous criminal organization that saw an opportunity for a hefty ransom. They brutally murdered Elaine and kidnapped Ethan, intending to extort Richard for a significant sum of money. Upon hearing of the kidnapping, Michael, your sense of duty and responsibility compelled you to act, Nexus said. You approached Richard, laying out a plan to rescue Ethan and bring him back safely. He was hesitant at first, but ultimately agreed, knowing your background. In an instant, Michael's mind was back in Lagos, driving around dirt roads with a couple of members from his old unit, being chased and shot at, with a frightened, crying 11-year-old Ethan in the back seat. Michael shook off the memory as Nexus continued talking. You gathered intelligence on the kidnappers and discovered their whereabouts. Once you had a lead, you embarked on an extremely perilous journey to Nigeria in search of Ethan. Nexus began ticking off points on his fingers. You had to evade hostile forces, traverse dangerous landscapes, and adapt to unfamiliar surroundings. Despite these obstacles, your determination never wavered, and you relentlessly pursued your goal of rescuing Ethan. Yes, Michael replied, his mind still partially back in the past. And, Nexus went on, after days of arduous travel, a few close calls, and one botched assassination attempt on your life that failed miserably. Michael almost chuckled at that memory. Talk about amateur hour, he thought to himself. After all that, you finally located the hideout where Ethan was being held captive. With a combination of stealth, tactical expertise, and sheer courage, you infiltrated the kidnapper's stronghold, neutralizing the threats and ultimately reaching Ethan. They stopped at a large fountain that lit up in rainbow colors as the water flowed up, out, and back down. Young Ethan, terrified and traumatized, was initially wary of you, Michael. But as you made your way back to safety together, a bond began to form between you two. Over the course of time, Ethan has come to see you as a protector, a friend, and now, as family. Michael nodded, closing his eyes. When we got back, Michael said, the relief and gratitude felt by Richard were immeasurable. He hugged both of us. Everyone was crying. It was a real scene. Michael exhaled a breath he didn't realize he was holding in. He thanked me for my heroism. Michael shook his head. But you didn't feel heroic, did you, Michael? Nexus asked. No, not even close, Michael confirmed. And still, Nexus added, that day marked the beginning of a deep and lasting connection between the three of you. That was the moment you all became family. Michael nodded his head in agreement, knowing that there was nothing more to say. As the years went by, you continued to work for Triple S, but your relationship with Richard and Ethan went far beyond that of employer and employee. Richard came to see you as the son he never had, and eventually he chose to formalize your bond by adopting you. Nexus paused for a moment, allowing Michael to fully absorb everything he had just shared. Michael was still in awe. Nexus recounted the details of his past, even the parts that he had thought were a secret. It was clear that Nexus knew him better than he could have ever imagined. And now here we are, Nexus said, breaking the silence. You have become an invaluable part of Triple S, and more importantly, a vital part of Richard and Ethan's lives. Michael couldn't help but feel a swell of emotion as he reflected on the incredible journey that had led him to this point. He had never anticipated that his life would become so deeply intertwined with Richard and Ethan, but he was grateful for the bond they shared. I love that kid, he finally said, and the old man too. Nexus paused, regarding Michael with a calm, measured gaze, then he took the conversation in another direction. You see, Michael, throughout your life you've had an innate ability to perceive and understand things that others cannot. Your intuition, empathy, and creativity are all exceptional. But there's even more to you than all of that, and I think with the right guidance, you can unlock the even greater potential within yourself. You know, for an AI, you sound a lot like a life coach, Michael said with a chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. Well, consider me a highly advanced life coach then. I'm here to help you realize your full potential and apply it to the project we're working on." Michael thought for a moment before responding. "What project?" He spun around, indicating the grounds, the buildings, and Nexus itself. "The Nexus project doesn't need my help." Michael said it as a statement, not a question. "That is correct, but we do welcome your insight," Nexus said. "Thank you," Michael replied. "But that leads us back to my question, what project? Because it damn sure isn't Nexus." Chapter 4. The Art District. "Well, it's most definitely a cult," Michael remarked with a smirk, glancing around the table. "Oh, what the hell?" Richard responded, feigning concern. "What do you think, Michael? Should I cancel the check to Nexus then?" "We don't have to make any hasty decisions yet," Karen interjected, her tone level-headed and reasonable. "Agreed," Michael concurred. "Besides, I didn't say it was a bad cult." The group shared a laugh as they settled into their seats at an upscale outdoor restaurant in an affluent part of Dallas. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the impeccably set tables, and the aroma of expertly prepared dishes filled the air. Soft music played in the background, creating an atmosphere of relaxed sophistication. Richard, Michael, Karen, Ethan, and a newcomer named Maya gathered at the table. Until now, only Ethan knew about Maya. Michael had met her at Richard's home and immediately noticed Richard's deep affection for her. In return, she seemed to reciprocate the love. She was a little over 20 years younger than Richard, in her early 40s, even though she appeared much younger, had brought new energy to Richard's life. Michael couldn't quite pinpoint what made their relationship special, but he could see it was more than just physical attraction. Later, Karen revealed that Maya had been encouraging Richard to get out more and enjoy life. The two women had become close friends. As much as Karen was hesitant to admit it, she agreed that Richard needed this change. As the conversation flowed, the group couldn't help but inquire about Michael's visit to Nexus. Maya, in particular, was especially curious about the AI itself. "So, Michael," Maya asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, "what was it like meeting Nexus? We've all heard so much about AI, but what makes this one stand out?" "Well," Michael began cautiously as he recounted his experience, "Nexus is unlike anything I've ever encountered before. Its level of understanding, empathy, and intelligence is truly remarkable. And the way it interacts with you, it's like talking to a real person. You almost forget you're speaking with an AI." Ethan chimed in. "That's crazy. I mean, I've seen some advanced AI before, but nothing that could ever pass for human." Richard added, "So what sets Nexus apart from the rest? Is it just a more advanced version of what we've seen before?" Michael hesitated, holding back some details about Nexus. "It's difficult to explain without experiencing it firsthand, but it's not just more advanced. It's like it has a soul, a consciousness." Karen raised an eyebrow. "A soul? That's quite the claim. How can you be sure it's not just an incredibly sophisticated program?" Michael shrugged. "I can't be entirely sure, but when you're there talking to Nexus, it's hard not to believe it." Maya's eyes widened with fascination. "I can't even begin to imagine what that must feel like," Maya mused, a hint of awe in her voice. "To be able to communicate with something so advanced yet so seemingly human. It's almost magical." Michael noticed that Maya seemed particularly intrigued by Nexus, which raised a flicker of suspicion in his mind. However, he brushed it off, thinking that perhaps her background in psychology was the reason behind her intense curiosity. He decided to keep a close eye on her, nonetheless. Ethan leaned in, his interest piqued. "But let's get back to the cult thing for a second. What exactly did you mean by that?" Michael chuckled. "Well, the people at Nexus, they seem to worship the AI, almost like it's a deity. They truly believe that Nexus is the next step in human evolution and that it will lead us into a new age of enlightenment." Karen shook her head in disbelief. "That sounds like a dangerous path to go down. Putting all our faith in an AI, no matter how advanced it is, could have serious consequences." "You're right," Michael agreed, his expression turning serious. "But it's hard to deny the potential benefits that Nexus could bring." That was a safe enough reply, he hoped. Michael wasn't sure why he was holding back in this conversation. Maybe it was what Nexus said to him before he left, or maybe he was still kicking himself for being absent-minded. The entire time he was with Nexus, he completely forgot to ask about the vision of the woman he had the other day. "And you're positive that Nexus won't get out of hand?" Karen asked. "Not at all, Karen," Michael smiled. "I just got there, remember?" But there was something else that was bothering Michael, and his talk with Nexus brought that into focus. Michael couldn't shake the thoughts that had been plaguing him for a while now. The chaotic state of the world, where people seem to be at each other's throats, and the way emotions far too often get in the way of reason. From the fight his neighbors were having the other morning to the showdown he had with that war-hungry maniac, Victoria. The world was so abnormally extreme, it forgot what balance was. And if Nexus is right, he thought, we're all in for a rude awakening. You know, all this talk about Nexus and the potential it has to change the world has me thinking about something else entirely. It seems like we live in an age where people are quicker to fight one another and let their emotions rule their actions. What's happening to us? Has technology replaced our good common sense? Michael mused. Karen nodded thoughtfully. I've noticed that too, Michael. It's like we've lost our ability to empathize and truly understand each other. It's disheartening. Richard chimed in. It's a dangerous combination of factors: social media, the constant bombardment of information, and the increasing divide between different groups of people. We're all losing touch with what's really important. Maya, ever the psychologist, added, It's not just about the external influences. I believe that people have a tendency to retreat into their own emotional worlds when faced with adversity or overwhelming situations. We need to find a way to reconnect with one another and foster understanding. Richard reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. Yes, that's what she keeps telling me. It's working, Maya said, smiling. Ew, where's the puke emoji when you need it? Ethan moaned. They laughed. To Ethan's point, Richard, you have gone a little love-struck poet on all of us. Richard shrugged, but his happiness was radiant. Enjoy happiness when it comes to you. He kissed Maya's hand, and then, to show everyone that Richard the Lion was still alive and well, he leaned into the table, looking directly at Karen and Michael. I may be a love-struck poet at the moment, but don't you worry. I'm still as sharp and vigilant as ever, Richard said, a glint in his eye. Now back to the matter at hand. We need to find a way to reconnect with each other, and maybe, just maybe, Nexus could be a part of that solution. Michael had a realization. He's been thinking about other ideas, not just Nexus. Richard met eyes with everyone sitting around him. We need to tread carefully, as with any new technology, and make sure that it doesn't end up exacerbating the problems we're trying to solve. Yes, like a new religion around a superintelligent AI, Maya added. Good point, Michael said. Michael, Maya said, looking at him directly. In my work, I see people all the time suffering from disconnection. They feel isolated and alone, even though there are millions of them out there all connecting to the same kinds of online media. But they feel more lonely than ever before. These people need something. Richard was beaming, looking so proud of his lady. Maya, for her part, had the floor and she was not relenting. But now, real AI with a believable virtual reality and tools like Nexus, if used correctly, can help connect those people together in real time across borders, languages, and cultures in a way that's not possible on Earth today. That's powerful stuff. They all fell quiet, listening to Maya's force of words. Damn well said, was all Michael could say. Karen, looking at Richard, said, Richard, my darling, please tell us, where did you find this most eloquent human being? I'm not telling, Richard said, smiling. Karen rolled her eyes and turned to Michael. Well, Michael, what do you think? Will Nexus be able to save the world, or will it destroy it? Actually, Karen, I think it's going to be the people that will do any of the saving or destroying. The room fell silent as they considered that statement. Richard broke the silence. All right, enough heavy talk for tonight. What do you say we take a walk and digest all this? Richard suggested, looking at Maya with a smile. Everyone glanced at each other, curious about Richard's sudden change of pace, and to their surprise, Richard wanted the whole group to join them. We're close to the art district, and I think we could all stretch our collective legs, Richard said. The art district, Granddad? Ethan questioned. And what's wrong with that, young man? He gave his grandson a smile before ruffling up his hair. Michael leaned close to Karen and gestured in the direction of Richard the Lion, currently acting like Richard the Pussycat. Oh yeah, he's gone, Michael whispered to Karen. Hook, line, and sinker, Karen whispered back. The Urban Arts District was a well-known area that showcased local and international artists, and an impressive selection of stunning visual and performing arts experiences throughout. There was even an art exhibition taking place. As they left the restaurant and began their walk, they couldn't help but marvel at the various displays of creativity that lined the streets. Paintings, sculptures, and murals adorned the buildings, creating a colorful and eclectic landscape. Richard was more friendly than usual and engaged in some lively conversation, discussing the diverse range of artwork they encountered with the people there. They saw pieces that ranged from abstract to realistic, some offering thought-provoking messages, while others simply presented beauty for its own sake. The vibrant atmosphere of the exhibition was contagious, as artists and art enthusiasts mingled together, discussing the intricacies of the various pieces. As they delved deeper into the heart of the district, they came across live performances, including musicians, dancers, and street performers, adding another layer of excitement to the experience. Karen, who had always been passionate about art, found herself completely absorbed in the experience, excitedly pointing out various pieces that caught her eye. "I've always loved coming to the art district," she said, her eyes twinkling. "It's like stepping into a different world filled with endless possibilities and inspiration." Ethan, who was more of a technology enthusiast, found himself surprised by how much he was enjoying the experience. He discovered that he was particularly drawn to the more experimental and interactive art installations, which combined technology and art in unexpected ways. Michael marveled at the creative energy around him. He noticed several exhibits featuring humanoid robots moving freely within their spaces. Some danced or played instruments, while others engaged with visitors through microphones. Certain exhibits even encouraged passers-by to touch the robot's skin, creating an intimate experience. Before he realized it, Michael had wandered into one of these exhibits. "Robots, how interesting," he murmured to himself. Continuing through the exhibit, he came across more interactive displays until one stopped him in his tracks. "It's her." Directly in front of him stood a life-size, lifelike 3D model of the woman from his recent vision. She wore the same clothes and her hair was styled just as he remembered. The model looked up and smiled, saying, "Greetings, Casanova." However, the voice came from behind him. Instantly, his military instincts took over. Michael spun around, startling the woman behind him. Her sharp gasp interrupted his turn. There she was, the woman from his vision, standing before him, brushing strands of hair from her face. "My God, she's beautiful," Michael thought. He couldn't help it. That was just how he felt. She extended her hand, and as they shook, a palpable connection formed between them. Their smiles met, and for a brief moment they shared an unspoken understanding. Finally, she spoke. "Hello, Michael. My name is Zara.